On the cold steel table, a helpless puppy stared into the vet's eyes, his tiny paw trembling against the doctor's hand. He wasn't just scared, he was begging for his life. What the vet discovered next would break his heart and shock everyone watching. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The veterinary clinic smelled faintly of disinfectant, its bright white tiles reflecting the cold winter sun that slipped through the windows. Dr. Harris, a seasoned vet with years of experience, adjusted his glasses as the door creaked open. A young family shuffled in, their faces uneasy, a small bundle cradled in the father's arms. When the blanket was lowered, Dr. Harris's heart skipped. A tiny puppy stared back at him, eyes wide and shimmering with fear. The pup's paws trembled, his body shivering despite the warmth inside. Gently, the father placed him on the steel table, avoiding eye contact. We want him put down," he muttered to Dr. Harris froze. The words hung heavy in the sterile air. He glanced at the puppy again. There were no signs of fatal illness, no visible wounds that demanded such a decision. Confusion gnawed at him. "Why?" he asked quietly, his voice firm but measured. Before the family could answer, the puppy stretched forward, placing one small paw on Dr. Harris's hand. His dark, pleading eyes locked onto the vet's with an intensity that spoke louder than words. In that instant, the room seemed to fall silent. Something wasn't right. Dr. Harris didn't move his hand. The tiny paw pressed against his skin, with surprising strength, as though the puppy was clinging to his last hope. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to look back at the family. "There must be some mistake," he said slowly. "This puppy looks healthy. Why would you want him euthanized?" The mother shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting away. "He's too much trouble," she whispered. "We don't have time for training. He chews things, cries at night. The kids are scared of him." Her words were flat, almost rehearsed, but Dr. Harris could feel the weight of them crushing his chest. The father crossed his arms, impatience flashing in his eyes. "We can't afford him. Food, shots, it's all too much. Just do it, doctor. It's easier this way." His tone was cold, final, as though the life trembling on the table was nothing more than an inconvenience. Dr. Harris looked back at the puppy. The little one's body shook, but his eyes never wavered. They were pleading, almost human in their desperation. A lump rose in the vet's throat. He had euthanized animals before, but this felt different, wrong. Deep down, he knew this wasn't a medical decision. It was something darker. Dr. Harris drew in a steady breath and gently lifted the puppy from the cold steel table. "Before I make any decisions, I need to examine him," he said firmly. The family exchanged uneasy glances but didn't protest. Carrying the small pup into the exam room, Harris felt the fragile heartbeat fluttering beneath his fingers. Under the bright lamp, the truth began to surface. The puppy's ribs showed faintly beneath his thin coat, far too visible for his age. His tiny paws were rough, scarred with small scratches that told stories of neglect. When Harris brushed his hand along the pup's side, he felt the edges of old bruises hidden beneath the fur. The little dog whimpered softly, but never pulled away. Instead, he leaned into the vet's touch, pressing his nose against Harris's wrist as if begging him not to stop. The gesture was tender, desperate, a silent cry for kindness he'd never known. Dr. Harris's jaw tightened. This wasn't a sick puppy being spared suffering. This was a life discarded because it was inconvenient. His chest ached as he realized the truth. The puppy hadn't placed his paw on his hand to resist death. It was to plead for love, for a chance to live. For the first time in years, Harris felt his eyes sting with tears. Looking into the puppy's trembling gaze, he whispered to himself, "I won't let this happen. Not to you." Dr. Harris returned to the exam room. The puppy nestled carefully in his arms. His face was calm, but inside, anger simmered like a storm waiting to break. He set the pup gently back on the table, keeping one reassuring hand on its back. Then he faced the family. "I ran a full check," he began, his tone firm. "This puppy isn't sick. He isn't suffering. There is absolutely no medical reason to euthanize him." His words echoed in the sterile room, sharp and unwavering. The parents exchanged looks, but neither spoke. Finally, the father scoffed. "Like I said, we can't keep him. He's a nuisance. If you won't do it, Then we'll just leave him here. Our problem ends today." His voice was flat, dismissive, as though the tiny life trembling on the table was nothing more than trash. The puppy pressed closer to Dr. Harris's hand, his wide eyes darting between the humans in the room. Harris felt the weight of that touch. Trust, desperation, a choice made without words. He straightened, his decision solidified. "Then you've already made your choice," he said. "If you don't want him, I'll take him. He deserves better than this." The family stood in stunned silence. The puppy let out a small whimper, then nuzzled into Harris's palm, as if he already knew he'd found his protector. From that day forward, the puppy's life changed completely. Dr. Harris carried him out of the clinic not as a patient, but as family. At home, he prepared a soft bed by the fireplace, lined with blankets. For the first time, the little pup curled up somewhere warm, sighing as if he finally felt safe. The days that followed revealed just how fragile he had been. At first, he ate cautiously, nibbling as though afraid the food might vanish. His body trembled when shadows passed or doors creaked. Memories of neglect etched deep inside him. But each night, Dr. Harris knelt by his side, whispering softly, reminding him he was no longer alone. Slowly, the change began. The pup's ribs disappeared beneath a healthy coat of fur. His tail, once stiff and uncertain, started wagging whenever Harris entered the room. He learned to chase after a ball, bounding clumsily across the floor, his barks turning playful instead of fearful. One evening, as Harris finished paperwork, the puppy padded over and rested his paw gently on the vet's knee, the same gesture from the clinic. But this time, it wasn't desperation. It was gratitude. Harris looked down, heart swelling, and whispered, "You just wanted a chance to live." In that moment, he knew saving the puppy hadn't just healed the dog. It had healed something inside himself too. Weeks turned into months, and the once fragile puppy grew strong and full of life. Every morning, he bounded to the clinic with Harris, tail wagging wildly, greeting patients with curious eyes and a joyful bark. The staff and visitors adored him, calling him the clinic's little guardian. The story of his rescue spread quickly through town. Neighbors, touched by the tale, offered food, toys, even donations to support the pup's care. Some even asked if he was available for adoption, but Harris always smiled and shook his head. He already chose his family, he'd say, glancing at the dog curled loyally at his feet. Late one evening, as Harris locked up the clinic, the puppy sat beside him, gazing up with trusting eyes. Harris knelt down, brushing a hand through the pup's soft fur. "That day in the exam room," he murmured, voice thick with emotion, "you weren't just begging to live. You were begging for love. And I promise, you'll never be without it again." The puppy pressed closer, tail thumping softly against the floor. In the quiet glow of the clinic lights, man and dog had found what they needed most. Not just survival, but family.